The moment Callan Mercer picked up the sleek black phone lying on the sidewalk outside the glass tower, he had no idea his entire life was about to fracture in two, and what he saw lighting up the screen made his hands go cold in the middle of a bright, ordinary afternoon that suddenly felt anything but ordinary. If this story touches your heart even a little, take a second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, because stories like this deserve to be felt, not just heard. Callan had only stepped into the city center that morning to pick up medication for his daughter Elsie and to try one more time to find steady work after weeks of rejection that had worn down even his quiet strength. The sun was high, reflecting sharply off the glass buildings, people moving in fast streams like they all had somewhere important to be except him. He was walking past the entrance of Caldwell Meridian Holdings, a place so polished it almost felt unreal, when he noticed a phone sliding off the hood of a waiting black car and hitting the pavement without anyone noticing. He hesitated only a second before picking it up, intending to hand it to security, but the screen flickered awake before he could take another step. What he saw made him stop so abruptly that the world around him seemed to blur. There, on the lock screen, was a notification glowing in urgent red letters: "Final confirmation received, genetic match successful for Elsie Mercer. Prepare immediate transfer approval for emergency cardiac procedure funding." His breath caught so sharply it felt like something inside him had been physically pulled out. His daughter's name wasn't common. It wasn't guesswork. It was Elsie Mercer, the same Elsie lying in a hospital bed across town fighting a failing heart that doctors said was too small, too weak, and too rare a condition to fix without a miracle. Callan's fingers tightened around the phone as if it might vanish, his mind refusing to connect the impossible dots forming in front of him. He almost dropped it again when a second notification appeared, this time showing a file labeled Confidential Donor Initiative, followed by a name he recognized instantly even though he had never met the woman behind it: Rowena Kincaid, CEO of Caldwell Meridian Holdings. The same company towering above him now, the same empire of glass and power he had walked past countless times without ever imagining it could be tied to his daughter's fragile life. Inside the phone, another message preview appeared, and Callan felt the ground beneath him shift in ways no physical force could explain. It read, "He will never accept help if he knows it comes from us. Continue anonymously. The child must receive the transplant regardless of his pride." Callan stood frozen in the middle of the sidewalk as people brushed past him, unaware that his entire reality was unraveling in silence. He had spent months believing he was alone in the fight for Elsie's life, fighting hospitals, insurance delays, and the crushing weight of helplessness. And yet here, in his hands, was proof that someone had been watching. Someone had been acting. Someone had been quietly trying to save his daughter without ever telling him. Rowena Kincaid was not just any CEO. Her name was associated with ruthless negotiations, billion-dollar decisions, and headlines that never mentioned compassion. And yet the messages on this phone told a different story, one that didn't match the image the world had painted of her. Callan's thoughts spiraled as he looked up at the towering building again, its shadow stretching across the street like a silent question. He should have returned the phone. He knew that. Every instinct told him to step away, to pretend he had never seen any of it. But the name Elsie Mercer kept burning in his mind like a lifeline he didn't dare let go of. Inside the phone, a calendar notification flashed: 12 p.m. meeting with Pediatric Transplant Coordination Team. Approval required for emergency funding release. And beneath it, a pinned note that simply said, "If anything happens to me before approval, ensure Elsie still gets her chance." Callan's chest tightened painfully. Something was happening behind these glass walls, something far bigger than him, and somehow his daughter was at the center of it. He looked at the building again, this time not as an outsider but as someone pulled into a story he never asked to be part of. He walked inside. The lobby was cool, bright, and impossibly quiet for a place of such power. Security barely noticed him as he held the phone tightly, his hands slightly trembling now. He asked for Rowena Kincaid, his voice rougher than he intended. The receptionist hesitated, scanning him like he didn't belong there, but something about the urgency in his expression made her call upstairs anyway. Minutes later, instead of security escorting him out, an assistant arrived, breathless, as if she had been expecting something like this but not this soon. He was guided through glass corridors until he reached a meeting room where sunlight poured across a long table covered in medical reports, financial approvals, and hospital documents. And at the far end of the room stood Rowena Kincaid herself. She was not what Callan expected. There was no arrogance in her posture, no cold detachment. Instead, there was exhaustion layered with determination, as if she had been carrying something heavy for far too long without letting it show. Her eyes immediately fell on the phone in his hand, and for the first time, something like fear crossed her face. Callan didn't speak at first. He couldn't. He simply placed the phone on the table. The silence that followed felt heavier than any words. Rowena finally stepped closer, her gaze locked on the screen still glowing with Elsie's name. For a moment, she looked like someone standing on the edge of a decision that could collapse everything she had built. When she spoke, her voice was steady but raw beneath it, as if she had rehearsed strength for too long. She explained without excuses. She had discovered Elsie's condition months earlier through a research foundation tied to her company's medical philanthropy division. The match wasn't random. It was personal. Years ago, Rowena had lost her younger brother to the same rare cardiac condition, and she had made a vow that no child would be lost to it again if she could prevent it. She had funded anonymous donor searches, matched medical data across continents, and quietly built a pipeline that could save lives without ever attaching her name to it, but Callan was not supposed to know. He was not supposed to feel indebted. He was not supposed to feel like help came with strings or humiliation. That was why everything had been hidden. Callan listened, but the part of him that had survived months of helplessness wasn't sure what to trust anymore. He had spent too long being disappointed by systems that promised care but delivered delay. His voice finally came out low, strained, asking why she never told him. Rowena's answer wasn't polished. It was human. She said she knew men like him would refuse charity, that pride often became its own kind of prison, and that she couldn't risk Elsie losing time because of it. She had chosen secrecy over permission, knowing it might one day cost her trust. The room fell into silence again, only broken by the distant hum of the city beyond the glass. Callan looked down at the phone again, at his daughter's name glowing so softly on the screen it almost felt like hope instead of data. He thought about Elsie's small hands gripping his finger at the hospital, about her tired smile that still tried to comfort him even when she was the one suffering. And for the first time in months, something inside him cracked open, not in despair, but in reluctant possibility. The tension didn't vanish, but it changed shape. Rowena stepped forward and slid a stack of signed medical approvals across the table. Everything was ready. The transplant process had been accelerated. The donor match had been secured. All that remained was consent and trust. Callan stared at the papers for a long time. Forgiveness didn't come easily. Neither did acceptance. But beneath everything, beneath fear and pride and confusion, there was a father who had spent too many nights wondering if tomorrow would be the day he lost his daughter. He signed, not because everything made sense, but because hope, even complicated hope, was still hope. The hours that followed moved with a strange softness, as if the world itself had slowed to make room for something important. Elsie was transferred under emergency protocol, and Rowena herself accompanied the process, no longer hiding behind distance or secrecy. Callan stayed close, watching every monitor, every movement, every small sign that his daughter was still holding on. At one point, Rowena stood beside him near the hospital window overlooking the bright daytime city, and for the first time, she looked less like a CEO and more like someone grieving a past she could never rewrite. She didn't ask for gratitude. She didn't expect it. She simply stood there, present, as if that was the only thing she could offer that truly mattered. When the doctors finally confirmed that the procedure had stabilized Elsie's condition and the transplant was successfully integrated, Callan felt something inside him collapse and rebuild at the same time. Relief didn't come as celebration. It came as quiet disbelief that his daughter might actually have a future beyond machines and waiting rooms. Rowena didn't smile widely or make speeches. She only nodded once, as if confirming a promise she had made long before Callan ever knew her name. In the days that followed, Elsie slowly regained strength, her color returning bit by bit like dawn returning after a long winter. Callan never stopped feeling the weight of what had happened, but it no longer felt like drowning. It felt like being carried. He and Rowena didn't become instant friends. They didn't erase the distance between their worlds. But something unspoken changed between them, something built on shared loss, stubborn hope, and the uncomfortable truth that kindness sometimes arrives in ways we don't recognize at first. Callan eventually returned to the sidewalk where it all began, standing in the same afternoon light, remembering how one dropped phone had split his life open. He no longer saw it as chance alone. He saw it as collision between desperation and compassion, between pride and mercy, between two people who never should have met but somehow saved the same fragile life together. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. And take a moment to comment what you believe mattered most in this story: trust, forgiveness, or the courage to help without being asked, because your thoughts keep this community of hope alive in ways that truly matter.